Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Chapter 8. Everything came rushing back to me in one overwhelming, painful wave. With Nico standing above me, his expression eerily similar to how it looked the last time we'd been this close, my body reacted before my mind could even process what was happening. Suddenly, there was a sharp smack and a sting in my hand. I had punched him. My knuckles connected with his jaw, sending his head snapping to the side. His eyes darkened, and he stumbled back slightly, his expression unreadable but intense. I shot upright from his bed, eyes wide and heart pounding. My hand trembled as Nico straightened, pressing a palm to his jaw where I'd hit him. From the look of it, I hadn't gone easy. "Oh my gosh," I blurted, stepping back with my hands raised. "I am so sorry. I didn't mean to, My words tangled together as panic took over. Before Nico could respond, I turned and bolted out of the room, nearly tripping over myself as I fled. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. It seemed like running out of Nico Beckett's room in a panic was becoming a bad habit. I sprinted to the kitchen, snatched my backpack off the floor, and dashed out of the house. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I ran all the way home, probably faster than anyone on the track team. Fumbling with my keys, I unlocked the door and stumbled inside, immediately bumping into something soft. "Ow!" A familiar voice yelped, followed by a hand swatting my head. "What the heck, Wes?" Jamie groaned, rubbing her side as she looked me up and down. Her expression softened when she saw my flustered face. "You look like you just saw a ghost. Where were you?" When I didn't answer right away, her lips curved into a teasing smile. "Oh no, don't tell me this is about that mystery person again. Who were you with?" "Jamie, please," I sighed, rubbing my temples. "It was just for a biology project, okay?" She snorted and pulled me into a playful headlock. "Sure it was. I mean it." I know," she laughed, ruffling my hair before releasing me. "You're way too easy to mess with." "I hate you," I muttered, earning another laugh from her as she walked toward the kitchen. Dragging myself upstairs, I flopped onto my bed and stared at the ceiling. My knuckles were red and throbbing, the skin tender where I'd hit Nico. I groaned, covering my face with my hands. "I'm so doomed," I whispered. This was the worst. "Wes." I looked up at the familiar voice. My heart lifted a little as I spotted Sophia waving from a cluster of train seats, Rachel and Parker sitting beside her. Parker had one foot propped up on an empty seat, waving me over before someone else could take it. I quickly apologized to a few commuters as I squeezed past and dropped into the seat beside him. Since that lunch with Sophia and her friends last Monday, Benny and I had been hanging around them more often. Everyone except Leo, who had football practice, usually took the same train in the mornings. It had become sort of an unspoken routine. We all traveled to school together now. Parker was in the middle of an animated conversation about some new video game he'd stayed up all weekend playing. His dark circles told the whole story. Sophia had scolded him earlier, giving me an apologetic smile as he kept talking, voice louder than necessary. Rachel sat quietly by the window, studying her chemistry notes and nibbling on the back of her highlighter. "So, did you do anything fun this weekend, Wes?" Sophia asked, her brown eyes warm as she glanced at me. My mind instantly flashed to Saturday, to Nico, to the argument, and the bruise still faintly coloring my knuckles. "And no," I stammered, my voice cracking. "Just studying." Sophia sighed. "Same. But your notes saved my life, honestly. You're my hero." She laughed softly, pretending to swoon, while Parker grinned and nudged my leg. My cheeks burned as Sophia smiled shyly, fiddling with the end of her ponytail. "It's our stop," I blurted, standing up a little too quickly. Parker gave me a knowing grin as Sophia hurried to stand beside me. As we exited the train, I could feel Parker and Rachel whispering behind us. Sophia groaned. "Just ignore them," she said with a small smile. Kind of hard to when there's staring holes in my back, I muttered, glancing over my shoulder. Parker was wiggling his eyebrows, and Rachel looked like she was about to burst from holding in her laughter. They're always like this, Sophia sighed. Well, mostly Parker. Rachel just plays along. Do they tease you a lot? I asked. Pretty much. She smiled faintly. So, you have a lot of heroes, then? I teased. Her cheeks flushed pink as she playfully smacked my arm. I laughed, rubbing the spot. She exhaled softly, her bangs fluttering as she whispered almost too quietly for me to hear, "You're the only one." I froze for a second, glancing at her. Her face was turned away, but I could see the pink tips of her ears peeking through her hair. A smile tugged at my lips. She's adorable. Nothing like that infuriating, tattooed troublemaker. We walked in silence until we reached the hallway where we usually split off to our lockers. Sophia hesitated for a moment, shifting on her feet before looking up at me shyly. "Well, I have fun in class," Sophia said, her voice slightly stiff. "Yeah," I replied with a small smile. "See you at lunch." Her face immediately brightened, the tension melting away. "Okay. See you then, Wes," she said, smiling so wide her eyes crinkled. She quickly linked arms with Rachel and walked off, her step light and cheerful. Parker passed by me a moment later, letting out a low whistle that made me glare at his back. Now alone, I turned toward my locker. Without Sophia or the others nearby, the uneasy feeling I'd been keeping at bay started creeping back in. My sore hand began to throb again, and dread settled in my stomach. I had barely slept last night, worrying about what would happen when I saw Nico. He was definitely going to be angry, and honestly, I half expected him to throw me into a bush or something equally dramatic. Glancing down the hallway, I scanned for any sign of dark hair or tattoos, but there was no Nico in sight. I let out a small sigh of relief as some of the tension left my shoulders. Just as I spun the lock on my locker, a pair of hands landed on my shoulders. I jumped and nearly dropped my books. "Whoa, Wes. Calm down," Benny laughed, clearly amused. "Why are you so jumpy today?" "Maybe because someone just snuck up on me," I said dryly, clutching my chest. Benny shrugged and opened his locker beside mine. "I saw you walking in with Sophia this morning," he said suddenly, peeking out from behind his locker door. I choked on my own breath. "You, what?" "Oh yeah," he said, smirking. "I saw everything. She was practically glowing and you—" Benny doubled over laughing before he could finish his sentence. "Would you stop?" I hissed, pinching the back of his neck. He hiccuped through his laughter, wiping away tears. Okay. It's just too funny. You two looked like something straight out of a cheesy teen drama." "Ha, very funny," I muttered. Before I could say anything else, Benny's expression changed. He stopped laughing and looked behind me, his eyebrows rising. "Whoa," he murmured. "That looks like it hurts." A hush fell over the hallway. I turned slowly, and my stomach dropped. Nico was walking down the hall. His dark hair was pushed back messily, his brows furrowed as his sharp eyes scanned the crowd. A dark bruise stretched across one side of his jaw, and a small cut on his lip had already scabbed. His expression was unreadable, calm, but dangerous in its silence. Even with that intimidating look, a few girls still tried to talk to him, brushing their hair over their shoulders, acting all confident. Nico didn't even glance twice at them. He brushed past, his gaze fixed elsewhere. "Don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me," I begged silently, gripping my books so tightly my knuckles turned white. Then his eyes met mine. My breath caught. Nico's expression hardened, and he started walking straight toward me. The crowd seemed to part for him, everyone turning to watch. "Did he get into another fight?" someone whispered. "Look at that bruise." "He still looks good, though," another voice giggled. "I wonder who he hit this time," a guy said behind me. "Whoever it was probably looks worse than he does." "Yeah," I thought grimly, "my hand does, at least." "He looks mad," Benny muttered nervously. "Whoever he's angry at is in serious trouble." "Thanks for the reassurance," I said through clenched teeth, my voice shaking. Nico was almost in front of me now. His steps were long and deliberate. The hallway went silent, every eye following him. Benny tensed behind me. Wait, is he walking over here? Benny whispered in disbelief. Nico stopped right in front of me. His sharp blue eyes locked on mine, his jaw tight. The bruise made him look even more intense. I froze, every nerve in my body screaming at me to run. He glanced at Benny for half a second, his stare icy, before focusing back on me. "Ooh," he started, voice low but steady. He looked around, clearly noticing all the curious stares around us. Clicking his tongue in irritation, he sighed. "I'll see you in biology," he said finally. "Why, see you," I stammered weakly. Without another word, Nico turned on his heel and walked away, pulling out a lighter and a cigarette as he headed toward the exit. The chill that ran down my spine lingered long after he was gone. People were still watching me, whispering, until I slammed my locker shut. The loud noise startled everyone enough to scatter. Benny blinked at me wide-eyed. "What was that? Why is he talking to you? And why did he look so upset? Since when do you even know Nico Beckett?" I swallowed hard, forcing a casual tone. "We're biology partners." "Seriously?" Benny stared like I just told him I was working with a celebrity. "That doesn't explain anything. Nico Beckett doesn't talk to anyone. He doesn't even hang out with people from school anymore. But now he's talking to you?" I gave him a weak laugh. "Guess I'm just really good at group projects?" He narrowed his eyes. "I still don't buy it. But I'm too freaked out to argue, so I'll drop it. Just, please, if he decides to get mad again, don't drag me into it." "Wow," I said with a faint smile, "you're such a supportive friend." Benny gave me a salute before heading off to class. I sighed, adjusting my bag as a few people still cast curious glances my way. This was going to be a very long day. Chapter 9. I usually arrived in class early, but this time I made it through the doors of the biology lab at the very last second, just before the clock struck the hour. Miss Levinson raised an eyebrow at me, clearly surprised by my near tardiness, but said nothing as I hurried to my usual seat at the front. My eyes scanned the room. No sign of Nico. "Today we'll be learning about plant reproduction," Miss Levinson began, her pen squeaking across the whiteboard. A few quiet snickers came from the back of the classroom. She sighed, rolling her eyes. Yes, reproduction. Get all your giggles out now." Before anyone could say more, the classroom door swung open with a loud bang. The room instantly fell silent. I didn't even have to look up to know who it was. My shoulders tensed automatically. "Late again, Mr. Beckett," Miss Levinson said coldly. I heard Nico's footsteps echo as he walked to his seat, the seat right next to mine. The chair screeched against the floor before he sat down. The faint scent of smoke and cologne lingered in the air. I could feel his gaze on me, tracing down my face, then my arm, until it stopped at my hand. Nico made a low sound when he noticed my bruised knuckles. I quickly hid my hand under the desk, pretending to focus on my notebook. Miss Levinson continued lecturing, but her words faded in and out. I could barely concentrate with Nico sitting so close. When she finally told us to open our textbooks and answer the exercises, a chorus of groans filled the room. I flipped to the assigned page, trying to ignore the burning awareness of Nico beside me. "I don't have a textbook," Nico muttered, moving a little closer. "So," I said without looking up, though my voice came out shakier than I intended. Nico sighed and casually pulled my book closer, his chair scraping the floor as he scooted nearer. His arm brushed mine, sending a jolt through me. "What are you doing?" I whispered under my breath, glancing around. A few students were openly watching us, pretending to study. Others peeked from behind their books. I could even feel Alyssa's stare from across the room, her gums snapping sharply. "You could at least share," Nico said lightly. "Especially after you punched me in the face." I froze, eyes widening. Nico smiled faintly, pointing to the fading bruise on his cheek. "It hurt, you know. Had to ice it all weekend," he said, still teasing. "You even made my lip bleed." "Please stop talking," I muttered, pressing a hand over my eyes. Nico chuckled, his voice dropping low so only I could hear. "No one's ever punched me after, spending time with me." I felt my face heat up. That's gross, I said quickly, glaring at him. Nico only laughed louder, drawing a few curious glances. Miss Levinson looked up, frowned, but when she saw me pale and uncomfortable, she just sighed and turned back to her papers. Why did you punch me anyway? Nico asked softly, tilting his head. You know why, I replied, my tone flat. I really don't, he said, pretending to look thoughtful. Tell me, Wes. The way he said my name made me shiver involuntarily. It was the same tone he'd used that night. I'm not, I stopped, my voice low. I'm not into guys. Neither am I, Nico replied easily. You were the first. I gave him a doubtful look. You seemed surprisingly fine with it. You didn't seem too against it either, he said, smirking. I was drunk, I blurted out, too loudly. Miss Levinson looked up again. I flashed an awkward smile, mouthing a quick, sorry, before she turned back to her work. It was a mistake, I whispered. A lapse in judgment. But you didn't seem to think so then, Nico murmured, a knowing glint in his eye. Oh my gosh, I groaned, sinking into my chair and covering my face with my hands. Nico just laughed quietly, leaning back. Anyway, you're still coming over Saturday, right? We've got that project to finish. Do I have a choice? I muttered. Not really, he said, amused. Then he handed me his phone. What's this for? I asked suspiciously. Your number, Nico said simply. So, I can text you the details. I hesitated. We're not supposed to have phones in class. Then be quick, he whispered, nodding toward Miss Levinson, who was grading papers at her desk. Rolling my eyes, I typed in my number and called my phone so I'd have his. Handing it back, I tried to ignore how casual he looked, leaning back in his seat as if he hadn't just caused chaos. Wesley Dillon, he read aloud from his screen. Hearing my full name in his voice made something twist inside me. I'll call you when I'm on my way, I said quietly. Nico grinned, standing up and walking out before the bell even rang. Mr. Beckett. Miss Levinson called sharply, but he didn't turn back. He just gave me one last look and lifted his phone slightly, like a silent promise, before the door shut behind him. Miss Levinson sighed deeply, shaking her head. Don't let him drag you down, Wesley, she said sternly. You have too much potential to waste it on trouble. I forced a weak smile and nodded. But as I sank back in my chair, I already knew. It might be too late. You survived the canteen. Congratulations, Sophia laughed beside me, her voice a soft melody amid the chaos of the dining hall. We left Benny behind to brave the crowd on his own and made our way outside to our usual table. Leo, Rachel, and Parker were already there. My chest warmed when I noticed they'd saved space for us. Sophia sat down first, smoothing her skirt before patting the empty seat beside her. I followed, setting down my tray and opening the container of lasagna I'd bought from the canteen. I heard a little rumor today, Parker said suddenly, leaning forward with a mischievous gleam in his eyes. It involves you and... Nico Beckett, Rachel interrupted before he could finish. She closed her book, her curiosity piqued. I froze. Leo nodded knowingly, which only confirmed that everyone at the table had heard something. Everyone except Sophia, who looked at me with a puzzled expression. What rumor? She asked, glancing between us. Before I could respond, Parker jumped in, his tone gleeful. Apparently, Nico went up to Wes this morning and threatened to beat him up. Sophia gasped, her hand flying to my arm. Her touch was warm and trembling. What? Are you okay? She asked, genuine concern shining in her chocolate brown eyes. I heard Nico almost punched you before storming off, Rachel added, her voice rising. Leo chimed in next, shrugging casually. I heard he pulled you behind the school to teach you a lesson, but since you're still breathing, I guess that one's not true. I sighed and quickly turned my bruised knuckles palm down on the table. None of those things happened, I said firmly. Sophia exhaled, visibly relieved. But his bad news was, you're not the kind of person who gets involved with someone like that. I gave a dry laugh, picking at my lasagna. Yeah, sure. Just then, Benny appeared beside me, hair wild and shirt half untucked. The canteen was a battlefield, he cried, collapsing onto the bench. Everyone burst out laughing. Parker plucked a loose button from Benny's shirt and twirled it between his fingers. "Did I miss anything?" Benny asked, taking a huge bite of his chicken wrap. "Just Wes and Nico drama," Parker said with a grin. Benny nearly choked. "Oh, that was terrifying this morning." Sophia frowned. "What happened?" "Yeah, Nico came up to us before class," Benny said, still wide-eyed. "He gave us this look, like if stairs could kill, we'd be gone." Rachel gasped. "So, the rumors are true?" "They're not," I said quickly. "I mean, he did talk to me, but he didn't threaten me or anything. I think." "Oh, so you're friends now?" Parker teased. "We're not friends," I said flatly. But even as I said it, the words felt strange. "We're just working on a biology project together," I added, avoiding everyone's eyes. Sophia's expression hardened slightly. "Let me guess, he's making you do all the work?" "That's not..." I stopped mid-sentence, realizing what I was about to say. "Why am I defending him?" "It doesn't matter," I muttered. "We'll finish the assignment and then go our separate ways." "That's good," Sophia said softly, her hand returning to my arm. "It's best not to get too close. He's not someone you want to rely on." Her words made me frown, though I wasn't sure why. "You sound just like Miss Levinson," I said with a small smile. Sophia laughed, then suddenly gasped as if she'd remembered something. She started rummaging through her things until she pulled her phone from beneath Leo's lunchbox, brushing off a stray piece of lettuce. "You," she muttered before unlocking it. After scrolling through her gallery, she held up a bright, colorful image. "There's a new Italian restaurant that opened near my place. I've been dying to try it out. Want to come with me on Saturday?" The excitement in her voice was contagious. She passed her phone around the table. "There's a big discount this week. Their menu looks amazing." Then she turned to me, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Can you come, Wes?" I hesitated. "I'm supposed to meet Nico that day. We're finishing our project." Sophia's smile faltered, but I quickly added, "I'll probably be done by dinner." Instantly, she brightened again. "Perfect. What about the rest of you?" Parker grinned, nudging Rachel, who nearly jumped out of her seat. "I'm, going out with my family that day," she said quickly. "Team dinner for the football club," Leo added. "I'm just really busy," Parker said, barely hiding his smirk. "Benny?" Sophia asked hopefully. Benny tapped his chin dramatically. "Sorry, can't. Helping my mom. You know, being the good son and all." Sophia groaned. "Seriously, guys? Pizza, pasta, and you're all bailing on me?" Parker waved her off with a grin. "You can go with Wes. He's free." "Fine," Sophia said, turning back to me shyly. "I'll meet you there at 6? "Sounds good," I said, feeling my face warm. "You'll be okay getting there on your own?" "Of course," she laughed. "I live right around the corner, remember?" I nodded quickly, trying to act casual. "Cool. Real smooth," Benny muttered under his breath. I kicked him lightly under the table. The rest of lunch passed quietly, but something lingered at the back of my mind. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that I was walking into something complicated. I just wasn't sure if it had more to do with Sophia or Nico. And honestly, I didn't want to find out. Chapter 10. I stood impatiently in front of Nico's door, the bright white walls nearly blinding under the morning sun. The phone rang and rang until I finally heard a crackle followed by a rough, tired groan. "It's too early, Wes," Nico complained, his voice raspy and filled with irritation. "You said I could come anytime," I replied, rolling my eyes. "And it's already 10 in the morning." There was a muffled sound of footsteps upstairs. I stepped back and peered through the window just as the curtains were pulled aside. Nico's sleep-tousled black hair and bleary blue eyes came into view. My breath caught for a moment. He looked exhausted but still unfairly put together. I lifted a hand and gave a small, awkward wave. Nico just sighed. "The spare keys under the rock next to the rose mallows," he said. I scanned the flower bed, confused. "The what?" "The red-orange ones," he continued, clearly watching me from the window. "No, not those. No, too far left. Next to the hydrangeas. Yep, there you go. Before I could reply, the call ended. Grumbling under my breath, I found the small rock he mentioned and pulled out the key. Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. I lingered by the doorway for a few moments, waiting for Nico to appear. He didn't. Nico? I called. Upstairs, came the faint response. With a sigh, I climbed the familiar staircase, gripping my backpack tightly. I knocked on his door. No answer. Pushing it open, I peeked inside, empty, except for the faint sound of running water behind the slightly open bathroom door. You're showering? Now. I muttered, half amused, half irritated. Carefully stepping over scattered clothes, I sat down on his desk chair, moving aside the pile of laundry that had taken over. The chair squeaked under my weight, and I spun it slightly, scanning the messy desk before me. A few dusty trophies, old books, empty bottles, and the occasional crumpled paper. A small photo frame caught my attention. I brushed off the thin layer of dust and lifted it. Inside was a picture of a woman, her graying hair tied back, smiling warmly as she hugged a young boy from behind. A boy with dark hair, bright blue eyes, and a wide, innocent grin. So, this was you, I murmured, smiling faintly. You were actually a cute kid, Nico Beckett. Just as I said that, the bathroom door opened. I nearly dropped the photo. Nico stepped out, freshly showered, towel draped loosely around his shoulders, his damp hair falling over his forehead. He noticed me staring and chuckled softly. That sound, low and warm, pulled me out of my daze. I quickly stood and moved toward his wardrobe. I'll bring the samples downstairs, I said, trying to sound casual as I reached for the large box on the top shelf. It was heavier than I expected, and I struggled to pull it down without dropping anything. Suddenly, I felt him step closer, his hands steadying the box beside mine. Careful, Nico said quietly from behind me. You've worked hard on this. Don't want to ruin it now. Thanks, I muttered quickly, trying to focus on the box instead of how close he was. I managed to carry it downstairs, my heart racing faster than I wanted to admit. In the kitchen, I unpacked the box, laying the petri dishes neatly on the counter. My cheeks were still warm, and I took a deep breath to calm down. When Nico finally joined me, he was dressed and freshly shaven, his hair slightly damp but pushed back from his face. He reached for some bread and tossed it into the toaster. Want anything? He asked, glancing at me. I shook my head. Suit yourself. The toaster popped, and he began spreading butter and Vegemite on the slices, moving with casual ease. I watched, a bit dazed, realizing that the ever-chaotic Nico Beckett could actually look peaceful doing something so ordinary. He caught me looking. Sure, you don't want anything? You look like you could use breakfast, he teased. I'm fine, I said quickly, flustered. He grinned. If you say so. I pulled out my notebook and focused on my work, measuring sprouts and recording numbers. Nico leaned back, watching me with an amused expression. So, what's on the agenda today? He asked. I replied dryly. As if you're going to help. I might, he said, smirking. If you ask nicely. I'd rather not. He laughed quietly, taking another bite of his toast. I continued working, ignoring the way his gaze occasionally drifted toward me. The task was slow, measuring each sprout, jotting down the lengths, and I found myself switching constantly between my ruler and my notes. Before I realized it, Nico had taken my notebook and pen from under my hands. Measurement? He asked, clicking the pen casually. 4, I replied, watching him write it down. His handwriting was messy, but the gesture made me pause. For once, he wasn't teasing, just helping. And as the sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, I couldn't help but think, maybe Nico Beckett wasn't always the trouble he pretended to be. 5. Pen scratching. 4. 4.5. The next hour passed in a rhythm of quiet focus. We spoke only when I had to call out a measurement or when a number didn't seem quite right. By the time we finished, the sun hung high in the sky, signaling noon. My notebook and stationery were neatly packed into my bag. I gathered all the used petri dishes into a large garbage bag and tied it shut. I'll throw these out on my way past the bin, I said, slinging my backpack over my shoulders. Nico looked at me for a moment, then stepped forward and gently took the bag from my hands. I'm hungry, he said casually. Good to know, I replied, raising an eyebrow. He smiled faintly and dropped the bag by the door. Have lunch with me. I blinked. Together. Nico chuckled at my disbelief. Yes, together. What? No way. Why not? He asked, stepping closer with an amused grin. Because I don't want to, I said quickly, taking a small step back. He tilted his head. Aren't you hungry? I'm not, I said firmly, just as my stomach growled in betrayal. Nico's grin widened. Your stomach says otherwise. Before I could protest, he gently took my wrist and guided me back toward the kitchen. I didn't resist, though I gave him a pointed look as I sat down on one of the counter stools. Nico opened the fridge, scanning its contents thoughtfully. Is there anything you don't eat? He asked, peeking at me from behind the fridge door. I'm not picky, I replied. Nico nodded and began pulling out ingredients. I expected sandwich fixings or instant noodles, but instead he set down an assortment of fresh vegetables, meat, and spices. It won't take long, he said reassuringly, catching the way I was watching him. My stomach rumbled again, and I quickly looked away, embarrassed. You're cooking? Best, surprised. He didn't answer directly, just smiled as he began chopping vegetables with practiced ease. The rhythmic sound of the knife hitting the cutting board filled the room. I leaned forward slightly, fascinated. Nico moved with quiet confidence, his usual restless energy replaced by something calm and focused. The sizzling sound from the pan filled the kitchen with warmth, and I found myself unexpectedly relaxed. Nico Beckett was cooking. For me. I didn't know you could cook, I admitted, breaking the silence. He chuckled softly. There are a lot of things you don't know. I paused, realizing how true that was. I knew very little about him beyond rumors, stories whispered at school about his temper, his habits, his carelessness. But sitting here, watching him work with a gentle smile, those stories didn't quite fit. Maybe he wasn't the person everyone said he was. Done, Nico said suddenly, placing a bowl in front of me. It was a creamy pasta dish topped with herbed chicken and colorful vegetables. The aroma alone made my mouth water. Nico sat beside me with his own bowl and began eating casually, as if this was nothing unusual. I twirled a bit of pasta onto my fork and took a bite. My eyes widened. It's really good. Nico smiled, clearly amused. Your face doesn't lie, Wes. Don't start, I muttered, trying to hide my blush as I focused on the food. The kitchen fell into a comfortable silence as we ate. After a few minutes, curiosity got the better of me. Nico? I asked softly. He hummed in response, not looking up from his plate. Does anyone else live here? Every time I've come over, it's just been you. I hesitated. That night. Nico smirked faintly but answered without teasing. My grandma lives here. She volunteers in town most Saturdays. That night, she was staying over at a friend's house. I wasn't worried, I said quickly. Sure, Nico replied with a knowing smile. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help smiling too. We didn't talk again until we finished eating. I reached forward to grab his empty bowl. I'll do the dishes. Before I could touch it, Nico's hand closed gently around mine, stopping me. His grip was warm, steady but firm. For a moment, neither of us moved. The room felt still. Then, suddenly, Nico leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't rushed or forceful, just brief, soft, and startlingly real. A question more than an answer. When he pulled away, I sat frozen, words lost somewhere between my heart and my throat. Why did you? I began, my voice barely a whisper. Nico leaned back against the counter, his eyes calm. I just wondered if it would feel the same when we weren't out of it. My heartbeat quickened. And did it? He thought for a moment, gaze flickering toward the window. I'm not sure. Neither was I. It felt familiar, but different, gentler, clearer. And it felt good. I should go, I said finally, standing and grabbing my bag to distract myself from the whirlwind in my chest. I'll take the trash out on my way. I headed for the door, but just before I stepped outside, his voice called out, calm, almost casual, but enough to make me pause. "See you on Monday, Wes." I turned slightly, catching the faint smile on his face. And though I didn't say it out loud, I knew I'd be thinking about that moment until then. 5. The sound of a pen scratching filled the air. 4. 4.5. Scratch again. The next hour went on much like this. Quiet, focused, with only small exchanges whenever I needed to adjust a measurement or came across something unusual. By midday, we were finally done. My notebook and stationery were neatly packed away in my bag. Pulling all the dishes into a large garbage bag and tying it shut, I swung my backpack over my shoulders. "I'll throw these out on my way past the bin," I told Nico. He hesitated for a second before stepping forward and taking the bag from my hands. "I'm hungry," he said suddenly. I blinked. "Good to know," I replied, unsure where that random comment was going. Nico smiled slightly, dropping the garbage bag by the door. "Have lunch with me." "Together?" I asked, taken aback. When he chuckled, I frowned. "What? No way." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to," I said, but he only took a step closer, still smiling. "Aren't you hungry?" "I'm not," I lied, just as my stomach grumbled in protest. Nico's grin widened at the sound, and before I could react, he gently took hold of my wrist and led me back into the kitchen. With a sigh, I sat on one of the counter stools. Nico opened the fridge, peeking around the door. "Is there anything you don't eat?" he asked. "I'm not picky," I said with a shrug. He nodded and began gathering ingredients. To my surprise, not just sandwich fixings but an assortment of vegetables, meat, and spices. "It won't take too long," Nico said as he began preparing the food. My stomach growled again, making me blush. "You're making lunch?" I asked, uncertain. He just smiled and got to work. I watched in quiet awe as he moved around the kitchen, confident, focused, his expression calm and content. The sound of sizzling in the pan was oddly soothing. Nico Beckett was cooking. For me. "I didn't know you could cook," I said after a while. "There are a lot of things you don't know," he replied with a small laugh, eyes still on the pan. His words made me pause. He was right, I didn't really know him. Everything I thought I knew came from rumors and whispers. People always said, "Don't hang around Nico Beckett. He's a bad influence." But watching him now, relaxed, smiling faintly as he stirred the sauce, it was hard to see that version of him. Maybe he wasn't what people said. Maybe I'd been wrong. "Done," Nico announced, setting a bowl in front of me. The dish smelled amazing, creamy pasta topped with herbed chicken and colorful vegetables. My mouth watered as Nico sat beside me with his own bowl. "It's good," I said after my first bite, unable to hide my surprise. "Your face doesn't lie," he teased, laughing when I flushed. "Be quiet," I muttered, though I couldn't stop smiling. The kitchen was quiet again as we ate, sunlight spilling in through the window. "Nico," I said softly. He hummed, still eating. "Does anyone else live here? Every time I've come over, it's just been you." I hesitated, remembering something awkwardly. That night. "My grandma lives here," he said easily. "But she's usually out on Saturdays, she volunteers in town. And that night she was visiting a friend." I wasn't worried, I blurted, but his amused grin told me he didn't believe me. When we finished eating, I reached for the dishes. "I'll do the dishes," I offered. Before I could touch them, Nico caught my hand, his grip warm and firm. I froze, startled by the closeness. For a brief, silent moment, our eyes met. Then, in one quick motion, he leaned forward and kissed me. It wasn't rough or sudden, just a soft, lingering kiss that left my heart racing. When he pulled away, I could only stare, breath caught somewhere between surprise and confusion. "Why did you?" I began quietly. Nico leaned against the counter, that familiar half-smile on his lips. "I just wanted to see if it felt the same as before." "And did it?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure," he said honestly. I nodded, understanding all too well. It did feel the same, yet somehow entirely different. Familiar but new. and if I was being honest, it felt right. I should go, I stammered, gathering my things quickly. I'll take the trash out with me. As I opened the door, I heard Nico's voice behind me, calm, certain, and a little playful. See you on Monday, Wes. The door shut softly behind me, but the warmth of his words lingered long after I left. Chapter 11. Sophia was already waiting at the restaurant when I arrived, even though I was early. Through the front window, I could see her sitting near the glass, her face half hidden behind the freshly painted sign that read Nicoletta's in bold red cursive with white trim. The name made me hesitate for a moment. It reminded me of someone else, but I pushed the thought aside as I stepped inside. A small bell above the door chimed, drawing a few curious glances from other diners, including Sophia. When she saw me, her face brightened, and she waved me over with a soft smile that instantly eased my nerves. Out of her school uniform, Sophia looked different, more relaxed, but no less striking. A loose black dress with small red flowers flowed gracefully over her frame. Her hair was tied up with a red clip, though a few strands had escaped, brushing against her flushed cheeks. Her brown eyes looked even softer under the warm lighting, lined lightly with makeup that only made her features glow. Sorry I'm late, I said as I sat down across from her. You're still early, Sophia laughed, waving her hand. It's nice to see you're punctual. Leo and Parker could learn from you. I chuckled and glanced around. A candle flickered between us, its glow reflecting off the white tablecloth. My leg accidentally brushed against hers beneath the table, and though she didn't react much, a faint blush crept up her cheeks. Pretending not to notice, I picked up the menu. Her perfume, sweet and faintly fruity, drifted through the air, making me clear my throat and focus on the words in front of me. I think I'm going to get the risotto, Sophia said, scanning the menu with a thoughtful look. Or maybe the prawn linguine, or the carbonara. Anything you don't want? I teased. She laughed and lightly tapped my shin with her foot. Oh hush. If you want, I offered, I could order the carbonara, and you get the risotto. We can share. Her eyes lit up instantly. Really? Yeah, I said, smiling. They both sound good, so it's a win-win. Her hand rested gently over mine, her thumb brushing against my skin in small circles. I froze for a second, my pulse quickening. Thanks, Wes, Sophia said softly, her fingers giving mine a light squeeze. She looked like she was about to say something more, but a loud cough beside us made both of us jump. A waiter stood there, pen in hand and an impatient look on his face. Sophia quickly pulled her hand back as I straightened in my seat. Ready to order? He asked flatly. Yes, I said quickly, pointing to the two dishes we wanted. The waiter scribbled them down and walked away before I could even thank him. Well, I said under my breath, he was friendly. Sophia snorted, hiding a grin. The brief laughter eased the tension, though the silence that followed soon crept back in. I do. We spoke at the same time, then stopped and laughed awkwardly. You first, I said. Sophia took a deep breath and met my eyes. Do you, have a girlfriend? She asked, the words tumbling out unevenly. She looked flustered, her hands twisting in her lap. I was just curious since you're, really nice and… I don't, I said, cutting in gently. Her eyes widened, and a smile slowly grew on her lips, soft and genuine. She tried to hide it by taking a sip of water, but her expression gave her away. Do you? I asked in return. Have a boyfriend? God, no, Sophia laughed, waving her hands dramatically. Guys don't really notice girls like me. I tilted my head. I don't see why they wouldn't. Her mouth fell open slightly as her cheeks turned a deeper shade of red. I don't mind if they don't, she mumbled. Except maybe certain people. She looked up through her lashes, her eyes searching mine. For a moment I forgot to breathe. Her hand brushed against mine again, light as a feather. Sophia, I started, my words catching in my throat. Before I could say more, the waiter's voice cut in. Who ordered the risotto? We both jumped, nearly knocking our chairs back. Oh, that's me, Sophia said quickly, raising her hand. The waiter placed the steaming dish in front of her, followed by my plate of carbonara. Though he was curt, I was secretly thankful for the interruption. "Don't worry," I said, forcing a smile as I picked up my fork. "I'll make sure to save you some of mine." Sophia giggled softly, the tension fading again as we both began to eat. But as I took the first bite, I couldn't help thinking, no matter how good this pasta was, it didn't taste quite the same as Nico's. Sophia shivered slightly as the cool evening breeze brushed against her bare arms. The door of Nicoletta's cafe closed softly behind us, leaving the hum of conversation and clinking glasses behind. Though the days were still warm, the nights had started to turn crisp, and I noticed goosebumps forming on her skin. "Sorry, I didn't think to bring a jacket," I said apologetically. "It's fine," Sophia replied with a small smile, rubbing her arms for warmth. "My house is just around the corner anyway." She nudged my arm playfully with her elbow, still hugging herself against the chill. We started walking down the quiet street, talking about anything that came to mind, school, exams, and random bits of gossip that didn't really matter. It was easy, comfortable. As the conversation flowed, Sophia seemed to warm up. Her hands eventually fell to her sides as we walked close together. Every now and then, the back of her hand brushed against mine. Brush. My step faltered for a second. I glanced at her, but Sophia kept her gaze low, biting her lip as if lost in thought. Brush. This time, her hand lingered just a little longer. I realized the touch wasn't an accident anymore. She moved a little closer, our shoulders almost touching. Brush. I looked down at the top of her head, where her brown hair had slipped loose from its bun. As if sensing my gaze, Sophia pulled out the elastic holding it up, letting her soft curls tumble down her back. The faint scent of her shampoo filled the air, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. "This is my place," Sophia said softly as we reached a small, two-story house with a neat little yard. The windows glowed warmly from inside, and I could faintly hear a TV playing. "Thanks for walking me home." "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I replied. Sophia smiled up at me, her eyes warm and searching. The glow from the porch light reflected in them, and for a brief moment, it felt like the world around us had gone still. "Thanks for dinner, Soph," I said, forcing a small smile. "I'll see you at school on Monday." I turned to leave, but before I could take a full step, Sophia's hand gently caught mine. "Wait, Wes," she said quietly. Her fingers were trembling slightly, maybe from the cold, maybe from nerves. "Yeah." I turned back to her. She hesitated, looking uncertain. "Do you not, like me?" "Of course I like you," I said quickly, but Sophia shook her head. "Not as a friend," she whispered, gripping my hand a little tighter. "I mean, do you like me?" My heart skipped. "Sophia." Before I could say anything else, she stepped forward and kissed me. It was brief and hesitant, more of a question than an answer. I tasted a trace of her lipstick, sweet, but faint. She pulled away almost immediately, her eyes wide with panic. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," she began, but I stopped her by gently holding her shoulders. "Sophia," I said softly, unsure of what I was doing but feeling something I couldn't quite explain. She looked up at me, her expression a mix of fear and hope. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The street was quiet except for the whisper of the wind and the faint murmur of the television inside her home. When Sophia smiled again, it was shy but genuine. "That was actually my first kiss," she said, cheeks turning pink. My eyes widened. "Really?" She nodded, laughing nervously. "Don't worry, Wes. It wasn't bad." I couldn't help but laugh softly with her, though my chest felt heavier than before. "I'll see you on Monday?" she asked, hearing the front door open behind her. A woman's gentle voice called from inside, "Sophia, you're home?" Sophia's mother appeared at the door, kind eyes, short brown hair streaked with gray, and a warm, knowing smile. "I'm coming, Mom." Sophia called back, giving me one last quick smile before slipping inside. As the door closed, I stood there on the quiet street, my thoughts spinning. I wiped the faint trace of lipstick from my mouth and sighed, unsure of what I was feeling, confusion, guilt, or something else entirely. Walking away, I tried to silence the thought that wouldn't leave me. You only kissed her back because you wanted to know if it felt different from before. And deep down, I already knew the answer. Chapter 12. The card reader beeped as I tapped my transport card against its worn surface, the graffiti around it half faded from years of sun and rain. My nearly empty balance flashed on the small screen, making me sigh before I slipped the card back into my pocket. Autumn had started to settle in. The mornings were cooler now, though the sunlight still stretched bright and clear across the sky. I pulled the sleeves of my jumper down to cover my fingers and adjusted the heavy straps of my backpack as I made my way to my usual spot under the station's platform roof. Sliding my earphones in, I glanced around. Groups of students lounged nearby, laughing and chatting. Some leaned casually against the fence, their shirts rolled up and their voices loud enough to echo. A few held cigarettes between their fingers, tapping ash to the ground before grinding the butts under their shoes. I had never smoked myself, but I still remembered the scent. The memory hit me like a wave. Nico had tasted like that night. I exhaled sharply, pressing 2 fingers to the bridge of my nose to push the thought away. I focused instead on the rhythm of the station. The same faces, the same motions. The same businessman running late, his tie half undone and briefcase swinging. The same woman sitting stiffly at the bench, glasses perched on her nose, expression sharp and unbothered. Even the graffiti on the corrugated fence hadn't changed, layers of neon and black letters overlapping like a history of strangers who had passed through. Everything looked exactly the same. Except me. I wasn't the same person who used to sit here every morning. Not after what happened. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I had been with Nico Beckett. I had kissed Sophia. And now, I was questioning everything. I groaned softly, catching the woman beside me glancing over in mild curiosity. She probably wondered why I wasn't reading quietly like usual. I felt like the world was spinning too fast, and no matter how much I tried to ignore it, it was catching up. The sharp blare of the approaching train snapped me out of my thoughts. The sound echoed through the platform as the train rounded the curve, metal screeching against metal. I stood up quickly, my heart thudding harder than it should have. The woman beside me rose too, much calmer than I was. Sophia would be on this train, in her usual carriage, in her usual seat. The thought made my stomach twist. After what happened on Saturday, I didn't know what we were now. I didn't even know what I wanted us to be. Sweat formed on the back of my neck despite the cool air. As the train slowed to a stop, I hesitated, stepping behind the billboard in the middle of the platform. One carriage passed. Then another. Then the third, the one Sophia usually boarded. I held my breath until it was gone. When the 4th carriage rolled by, I stepped out and slipped quietly into the last one. My heart raced as I found a seat in the corner, hoping she wouldn't see me. The train doors slid shut, and almost immediately, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, my palms clammy. Sophia, 7:58 a.m. Hey, where are you? The train's about to leave. Are you okay? You're never late. I stared at the message, guilt tightening in my chest. Then another text came through. Sophia, 7:59 a.m. You're not avoiding me, right? The words hit harder than I expected. I could almost picture her expression as she typed, the uncertainty in her eyes, the way she probably tried to act normal in front of Parker. Maybe she bit her lip the way she always did when she was nervous. Maybe part of her hoped I wouldn't reply at all, just so she wouldn't have to know for sure. But I couldn't leave her hanging. Wes, I'm not the... I was late, so I only made it to the last carriage. The door almost closed on me, I swear. A few seconds later, the typing bubbles appeared. I smiled faintly, imagining her relief. Sophia, 8 a.m. Figured. I was worried since you didn't message me after, Saturday. The guilt in my throat nearly choked me, but I forced a reply. Wes, 8:01 a.m. Sorry, I was busy. That bio assignment is killing me. I hesitated, fingers hovering above the screen before I added another line. And I don't have a lot of experience with this kind of thing. The typing bubbles appeared again, then stopped. Then appeared again. It took her a while to find the words. Sophia, 8:02 a.m. Neither. I haven't really talked to guys. Or kiss them. I don't want to rush anything, especially not with you because I really like you, Wes. But you probably know that already. A blushing emoji followed. I chuckled quietly. It sounded so much like her. Wes, 8:04 a.m. Slow is good. I'll see you at school? Sophia, 8:05 a.m. Of course, smiley face. Oh no, Parker's trying to peek at my phone. I'll talk to you later. After I deal with Parker. Wes, 8:05 a.m. Just throw him out the window. Sophia, 8:05 a.m. Already done. Smiling, I turned my phone off and leaned back, eyes closed. Slow. Yeah, I could do slow. Slow meant time to think, to understand what I was feeling, what I wanted. Slow meant getting to know Sophia, really knowing her, without rushing into something I didn't understand yet. Maybe if I took things slow, I could finally stop thinking about Nico Beckett, the person who had left my life more complicated than I ever asked it to be. Everything around me was changing too quickly. But maybe slowing down was exactly what I needed. Wesley's POV. Ws. Benny's voice came from behind me, and I barely had a second to brace myself before his arms slammed across my shoulders, his full weight pressing down on me. Benny, I sighed as he grinned, that familiar spark lighting up his eyes. My brow furrowed as he kept staring, his expression playful and mischievous. What? So, Benny whistled, glancing up at the ceiling like he wasn't about to tease me. I saw you and Sophia this morning. You two looked close. If you know what I mean. Yeah, I know what you mean, I said, elbowing him lightly in the ribs. He grunted but only laughed harder. You're wrong though. Sure, Wes, Benny said with a smirk that told me he didn't believe a word. That little kiss she gave you on the cheek? I must have imagined it, huh? I groaned. Fine. You're so right. But don't tell anyone, okay? We're figuring things out. Sophia wants to take it slow. Slow, huh? Benny raised a brow, clearly enjoying every second of this conversation. She's new to this kind of thing, right? My face heated, and Benny burst out laughing. She does know you're new to this too, right? Maybe you're the one who wants to take it slow. Very funny, I muttered, turning away from him and opening my locker just to give my hands something to do. The door swung wide, the metal clanging loudly enough to make a few people turn their heads. That's when I smelled it, that strong, sweet scent of fruity perfume. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. Alyssa leaned against the locker, chewing gum with an exaggerated pop. Her platinum hair looked freshly bleached, her nails painted to perfection. Her cherry red lipstick gleamed under the hallway lights. You need to stop making Nico work on your little biology project, she said sharply, tapping her nails against the metal. He doesn't hang out with us anymore, and it's your fault. Her friends echoed her words in the background like backup singers. I bit back the urge to roll my eyes. It's due next week, Alyssa. We have to work on it, I said calmly. Alyssa scoffed, peeled her gum from her mouth, and stuck it onto my locker door. The sight made my stomach twist. You're smart, right? She said mockingly. Do it yourself. It's a group project, I replied. Her glare sharpened. Before I could react, she grabbed my sweater and yanked me forward. Listen, Wes, she said in a low, cold tone, her friends' laughter echoing behind her. If you keep Nico busy this weekend, I swear I'll... She stopped suddenly when one of her friends nudged her. Alyssa's face shifted instantly, from anger to sweet innocence, as she smoothed her clothes and looked past me. Nico, she called out, her voice suddenly cheerful and high-pitched. She shoved past me on purpose, slamming me against the lockers as she hurried toward him. I clenched my jaw, watching her link her arm through his and press herself close as they walked together. Nico's face remained calm, almost bored, but Alyssa didn't seem to notice. As they passed, my eyes followed him, the way his dark hair stood out in the crowd, the way he carried himself like he didn't belong to anyone. Alyssa gave me a sharp glare and muttered something under her breath before disappearing into the hallway. I barely heard her, because Nico looked back. Just before turning the corner, he glanced over his shoulder. Our eyes met, his bright blue gaze locking with mine. His lips curved into a knowing smirk, the cigarette between them tilting slightly. And then he was gone. Benny shook my arm, asking what that whole scene was about, but I barely heard him. My heart was still racing and all I could think was, he didn't ignore me. Chapter 13. Sorry, I've got training during lunch. Leonard mumbled through a mouthful of sandwich, waving to us as he passed the table with his sports bag in hand. See you later, Sophia said, barely glancing up from her food as she waved goodbye. You glutton, I teased. Sophia gave me a mock frown and poked me in the side, but her expression quickly melted into a bright grin. Nothing's getting between me and my mom's pasta bake, all right? She said, lifting a forkful of pasta and waving it in front of my face before happily popping it into her mouth. Like I said, glutton, I repeated, smirking. Sophia just hummed, too busy enjoying her food to argue. She finally looked up as Rachel approached, her arms full of library books with her lunchbox balancing precariously on top. Studying during lunch? I asked. Rachel gave a sheepish smile. Yeah, I've got to work on my history paper. Let's just say my mom wasn't thrilled about my last grade. She gave us a little wave before wobbling off under the weight of her books. Well, that's Rachel and Leo out, Sophia said after swallowing another bite, glancing around the courtyard. Think Benny survived the lunch line? Probably not, I said, squinting through the cafeteria window but seeing no sign of him. What about Parker? Gone, Sophia replied with a grin, referring to our group chat from this morning. She even mimed throwing him out of a train and made a dramatic splat sound, trying not to laugh as I cracked up beside her. Seriously though? I asked once I caught my breath. I think he's got detention, Sophia said, leaning closer. He was talking in class again when the teacher told him to stop. You know Parker. He doesn't stop talking, I finished for her. Sophia laughed softly, her breath brushing against my ear. I suddenly noticed just how close she was, her shoulder pressed against mine, the warmth from her thigh brushing my leg. Exactly, she said, leaning back with a smile. I tried to focus on my sandwich, but it tasted bland in comparison to her pasta. Sophia noticed me picking at it and nudged me gently. Try some, she said, holding out a forkful of pasta, her eyes soft with amusement. You're sharing your favorite pasta with me? I said in mock shock. Is the world ending? Just eat it, Wes, she said with a laugh, pressing the fork lightly against my lips until I took a bite. Some sauce got on the corner of my mouth, and Sophia laughed as I chewed. It's good, I said quickly, and she beamed with pride. Of course it is. My mom's pasta bake is unbeatable, she said happily. I bet Nico could make something better. The thought hit me before I could stop it, and I mentally scolded myself. I swallowed hard as Sophia giggled, pointing to my cheek. You've got a little sauce there, she said. I wiped at my face but missed the spot entirely. Sophia shook her head, smiling before quickly glancing around. Then she leaned forward and gave a quick, gentle peck on my cheek. Got it, she said softly, blushing as she pulled back. I blinked in surprise, my hand instinctively brushing hers where it rested beside me. She hesitated, then laced her fingers through mine. Her hand felt warm against my palm. A second later, her face turned bright red, and she looked away, her hair falling forward as she shyly withdrew her hand. Still, she shifted a little closer. You're not giving me more of that pasta, are you? I teased. Nope, she half-sang, smiling as she turned back to her food. I smiled too, but then froze. From across the courtyard, through the glass doors, I saw someone watching us. Smoke curled upward and disappeared into the air. Nico stood there, a cigarette between his fingers, his blue eyes fixed on me. He exhaled slowly, dropping the cigarette and crushing it under his shoe. His tattooed arm flexed as he ran a hand through his dark hair, his expression unreadable but his gaze intense. My heart skipped a beat as he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. A few moments later, mine buzzed on the table. Sophia looked at it curiously, but I quickly snatched it up before she could see the screen. Probably my sister, I said quickly, turning the phone face down. Oh right, your older sister, Sophia said, going back to her food. I glanced back at Nico. He was still watching me, his expression now sharper, his brows furrowed slightly. I swallowed hard and lifted my phone, unlocking it under the table. Nico, 1:02 p.m. Behind the pool. By the time I looked up again, he was already walking away. My body moved before I could think. I stood up, gathering my things. Wes? Sophia asked, confusion clear in her voice. I've got to take care of something, I said, forcing a small smile before quickly packing up my lunch and heading toward the doors. Sorry, I just remembered I have a meeting, I said quickly, grabbing my bag. Sophia looked up from her food, her brow slightly raised. A meeting? With who? Nico Beckett. Mr. Peters, I lied smoothly. He found out I tried to get out of swimming practice. Sophia chuckled, patting my arm. Good luck, Wes. Hopefully he doesn't make you swim the butterfly race. Please don't jinx me, I said with a nervous laugh before rushing off toward the pool area. The old brick building stood quiet, empty during lunch. My footsteps echoed softly as I scanned the surroundings. There was no sign of Nico anywhere, not by the entrance, not near the benches, not even by the back wall. Nico! I called out, one hand resting against the cool brick, the other clutching my lunch bag. The silence pressed in. Nico! I called again, turning the corner. Before I could take another step, a door flew open. Strong hands grabbed me and pulled me inside. Whoa! I gasped as I stumbled, landing on a pile of foam floaters stacked in the corner. My heart pounded, and I looked up, straight into Nico's eyes. He stood over me, jaw tight, his dark hair falling into his face. What are you doing? I managed, catching my breath. Nico didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply as if trying to hold something back. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between frustration and something else I couldn't name. That girl, he finally said, his voice low. Sophia? I asked cautiously. Nico's eyes darkened, his brow furrowing. You with her? I hesitated. We're spending time together, I admitted carefully. His jaw tensed. So, you like her? I swallowed. Yeah. I do. Nico's stare cut through me. You can't, he said flatly. What do you mean I can't? I asked, frowning. You just don't, he said, voice quieter now but heavy with meaning. You're not being honest with yourself, Wes. That's not true, I said firmly, though my pulse was racing. Isn't it? He asked, his tone calm but piercing. You act like you're sure of what you want, but everything about you says otherwise. That's not fair, I argued, standing up now, dusting off my shirt. You don't get to decide who I am. Nico stepped closer, his blue eyes burning into mine. I'm not deciding anything, he said. I'm just saying what's obvious. I'm telling you, you're wrong, I snapped, though my voice trembled slightly. He studied me in silence, his gaze searching my face for something. For a moment, the air between us felt electric, charged, tense, and confusing. Finally, Nico stepped back, brushing off his pants with a quiet chuckle. You'll figure it out eventually, he said. Your heart already knows the truth. The rest of you just hasn't caught up. I clenched my fists, frustrated at how calm he sounded. Before leaving, Nico paused at the door and turned his head slightly, his lip ring catching the light. Oh, and Wes. What? I asked, still tense. Saturday, he said. My place. We've got a study session. And with that, he walked out, leaving me standing there in silence, heart racing, thoughts tangled, unsure whether I was angrier at him or at myself. Chapter 14. The school nurse gave me a knowing look before signing my permission slip. I thanked her quickly and left the infirmary, handing the slip to the front desk before signing out for the day. After what had happened in the pool storeroom with Nico, I just needed to get away from school. Even passing by that brick building made my stomach twist. Hoisting my backpack onto my shoulder, I started my walk home. When I saw our familiar house and the old silver sedan parked out front, a small sense of comfort washed over me. The clink of my keys against the metal security screen announced my arrival, and soon I heard footsteps approaching from inside. What are you doing home so early? My mom asked as she opened the door, her brow creasing with concern. She pulled me inside, pressing a hand to my forehead. "Are you sick? You don't seem to have a fever." I chuckled softly at her worried expression and gave her a quick hug before moving to the kitchen. Dropping my bag beside the counter, I sat on one of the stools. Mom moved around the kitchen, glancing at me every few seconds as she poured me a glass of juice and slid a pack of store-bought cookies my way. "I'm fine really, Mom. I just felt a little off earlier, but I'm okay now," I said, trying not to meet her eyes. Guilt tugged at me for lying, but I didn't want her to worry. Leanne Dillon sighed and zipped up her hoodie a little tighter before patting the top of my head. She gave my temple a quick kiss, her expression softening a bit. People often said we looked alike, and I could see why. Before I bleached my hair, we had the same shade of light brown with a natural wave. I got her warm brown eyes and soft facial features, though my chin was a little sharper. Her face carried gentle laugh lines and a constant trace of exhaustion from her work at the hospital, but she always managed to smile anyway. "Take care of yourself, Wes," Mom said, giving my cheek a light pinch. "I already have Jamie to worry about. Don't make me worry about you too." "You won't have to," I said with a grin, hugging her again. She laughed quietly before suddenly clapping her hands. "Oh, by the way, wait a sec." She rummaged through her handbag hanging on the chair, muttering to herself until she pulled out a folded brochure with a small triumphant "th." She handed it to me with a mysterious smile. I unfolded it to see an ad for a beach resort in Sorrento, a quiet coastal town about 2 hours away by car. "Looks nice," I said, glancing up at her. "But why are you showing me this?" Her smile grew. "Because I thought we could go there for a little family getaway next weekend. Me, Dad, and Jamie. Your dad's flying back from London for the long weekend." My eyes widened. Family trips were rare for us. Between Dad's business travels and Mom's hospital shifts, we barely ever went out of town. The thought of spending a few days together made me genuinely smile as I flipped through the brochure. "That sounds amazing, Mom," I said, and she grinned proudly. "Good, because I already booked it," she admitted, giving me a playful look. "You're not working that weekend?" I asked. She shook her head, but for a brief second, her expression faltered. I brushed it off as just a trick of the light from the window. Her smile returned quickly as she pinned the brochure on the fridge with a magnet. "It'll be a good chance for you to get more driving hours in too," she said with a teasing raise of her eyebrows. I groaned. "Mom, come on, Wes. You need more practice if you want your license. You'll be 18 soon, you've got to be ready." Fine, I muttered, glancing at the dented car in the driveway. My first attempt at driving had ended with me bumping into the mailbox. Since then, I preferred buses and trains over what I liked to call four-wheeled panic machines. I grabbed a cookie and stuffed it into my mouth before picking up my bag. "Thanks for the juice," I mumbled. She just hummed, already pulling on her reading glasses and sitting down with a sigh. Upstairs in my room, I dumped my books onto the desk. My biology folder slid out, spilling open to reveal notes from my last experiment with Nico. His bold, messy handwriting stretched across the page. At the bottom, I noticed a line scribbled in dark ink. "We have a study date." "For goodness sake," I muttered, dropping my head onto the desk with a soft thud. My forehead stung, but the dull ache was nothing compared to the mess of thoughts swirling in my mind. The room was silent, but my pulse filled my ears. I really didn't want to see Nico this weekend. After the kiss, I let my head fall against the desk again, wincing at the dull thud that followed. No matter how hard I tried, the memory wouldn't go away. The smell of chlorine, the damp air in the pool storeroom, the echo of Nico's voice in my ear. Even just thinking about him, his dark hair falling into his eyes, the faint glimmer of his lip ring catching the light, made my chest tighten. I could almost feel the heat of his hand brushing against mine, the way he looked at me as if he saw right through me. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I sat up straight, trying to shake the memory away, but it clung to me like a stubborn echo. My skin prickled, my face grew warm, and I suddenly felt sick, frustrated with myself for even remembering it in the first place. No, I muttered, shaking my head quickly as if I could erase the image. My chest rose and fell fast, my thoughts spinning. Why was I reacting like this? Why couldn't I just forget? It wasn't just the memory of the kiss. It was how it made me feel, the way my heart raced and the confusing warmth that spread through me every time I thought about him. It didn't make sense. None of it did. Stop thinking about it, I whispered to myself, dragging a shaky hand through my hair. It doesn't mean anything. It's just confusion. That's all. But the more I tried not to think about Nico, the clearer his image became. His teasing grin, his voice calling my name. Wes. The sound of my mother's voice calling from the hallway made me jump so suddenly that I almost fell off my chair. My pulse shot up, and I scrambled to make myself look normal. I sat upright, straightened my shirt, and pushed some papers over my desk in a poor attempt to look busy. Wes. Mom's voice came closer, followed by the doorknob turning. I grabbed the first textbook I could reach and placed it in front of me just as she stepped into the room, a few papers in her hand. My heart was still racing. So, she began casually, not noticing my panic, I was checking out some of the things we can do in Sorrento. There are some really nice beaches, and the resort has a balcony where we can have a barbecue. Maybe we can go snorkeling too. Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, sounds good, I said too quickly, my voice cracking slightly. Mom looked up from her papers, eyebrows raised. You sure you're okay, Wes? You look a little flushed. She reached out and pressed her hand to my forehead. I tensed at the contact, forcing a smile. You're warm and sweaty, she said, frowning. You might be getting a fever. I'll get the thermometer. My cheeks burned even more. No, I'm fine, Mom. Really. I just need some rest, I said hurriedly. Maybe a shower too. It was a long day at school. She studied me for a moment before nodding slowly. All right, honey. Don't stay up too late, okay? I won't, I replied quickly. Once she closed the door behind her, I sank back into my chair, covering my face with my hands. My heart was still pounding, and my mind was an absolute mess. What is wrong with me? I groaned, rubbing my temples. Everything had been fine, normal, until Nico came along and flipped everything upside down. One moment I was sure of who I was. The next, I couldn't even look at myself without questioning it. As I glanced around my desk, I noticed the piece of paper I'd shoved aside earlier, my biology project results. My stomach dropped when I realized it was the same one I had grabbed in a rush when Mom called me. It was now smudged and wrinkled, the ink slightly smeared. Oh, great, I muttered, rubbing a hand over my face. Just what I needed. I tried to smooth the paper out, but it was no use. The neat notes and calculations were blurred, Nico's dark handwriting still standing out on the page, mocking me. I sighed deeply, burying my face in my hands again. You're losing it, Wes, I mumbled to myself. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't started losing control today, or even this week. It began the moment I woke up in Nico Beckett's sheets. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.